Managing access to your Zoom meetings. Zoom, in the face of escalating bad publicity about phenomena like Zoom bombing and people breaking or crashing Zoom sessions who are uninvited, becoming disruptive, has taken to making a number of preemptive security changes in your Zoom accounts in an effort to stave off these unpleasant alternatives, though they're still quite rare and can be probably and in some cases the fixes have been as disruptive as the Zoom bombing has been. So this tutorial is going to give you an idea of how to manage access to your Zoom meetings and the options that you have and the pros and cons to each method of managing access. Overall, there are basically two ways to schedule or to start and manage access to Zoom meetings. One is to schedule your meetings in advance, and if you know when they're going to be occurring, that's certainly an option. You have two ways to schedule a Zoom meeting. You can either web to zoom.us and log in to your Confer Zoom account at the Zoom website using the same email address and password that were used to create your Confer Zoom account. Or if you are using Zoom in conjunction with Canvas, you can use the Confer Zoom app in the course menu in your Canvas courses. If you use the Confer Zoom app, you can schedule a meeting using this button right here. The process is quite simple. You just fill in this form, setting times, approximate durations, dates, and so on. When you schedule a Zoom meeting using the Confer Zoom app, Zoom automatically creates a randomly generated meeting ID and meeting access process that will be different for each scheduled meeting. In order for your students to access your meetings and access the correct meeting room, they either have to join the meeting through the Confer Zoom app. They don't see the capabilities here to create meetings, but they do see options to join them if they're scheduled. You can also get the information about the access information about a scheduled Zoom meeting in the Confer Zoom app by clicking on the title of the meeting. And you'll find the meeting ID right here and the session password right here. And passwords are automatically also randomly set. They're different for each scheduled meeting, and you cannot turn them off. You cannot turn off the password protection on the scheduled meeting. As long as the students access your meetings through the Confer Zoom app in Canvas, this works fine because they'll automatically be taken to the right Zoom room and authenticated properly. If, however, they use a meeting ID or a join link that might have been sent to them previously, they're either not going to be able to access any meeting at all, or they are going to end up in a different Zoom room than you are. This has happened to a number of people and is almost the only way that Zoom ever fails to operate properly. Alternatively, you can schedule your Zoom meetings through the Zoom website by going to the Meetings menu and selecting Schedule a New Meeting. The process is essentially identical to the one in the Confer Zoom app. The screens look a little different, but you have the same capability of setting meeting start time, dates and times, durations. Um, but in at the Zoom website, you also have the option, instead of generating a meeting ID automatically, of using your personal meeting ID, your personal meeting room, which never change, whose ID, meeting ID, and access information never changes. You also here have the option to turn off the requirement for passwords. While this does slightly increase the risk of an intrusion, an unwanted intrusion into your Zoom meetings by a Zoom bomber, this phenomenon remains extremely rare. On the plus side, this makes it much less likely that your students will end up in one meeting room while you end up in another, or lack the appropriate password to get in if they do have the appropriate link for your meeting. The decision of whether to do this here or in the Confer Zoom app balances two risks against one another. On the one hand, the risk that students will end up in the wrong Zoom room against the risk that you will have your meeting interrupted by an intrusion with an unwanted attendee. I'll just say that the students ending up in the wrong room happens much more frequently than a Zoom bombing does. And Zoom bombings can be easily countered by a number of techniques that we have illustrated in other tutorials. The decision, of course, is yours. If you choose, as I do, to use your personal meeting room consistently, you can go back to the Meetings tab, or the Meetings menu, click on the link to your personal meeting room, and be sure that you have, and if you wish, be sure that you have, once you edit the meeting here in the lower right, be sure that you have turned off your meeting password if you desire that change. And save the change. In this case, if you consistently use your personal meeting room, when you're scheduling a meeting, all of your meetings will have the same meeting ID, and they will all use your personal Confer Zoom personal ID, personal meeting room join link, which is right here. I'm not going to show mine in a public forum, but this is what you can copy to your clipboard and send to your students in emails or link into hyperlinks in Canvas. If you want to be even more certain that all of your meetings use your personal meeting room, you can go to your settings, scroll down under the Meeting tab here, scroll down to Enable Personal Meeting ID, set that to on, and also set on the options to use personal meeting ID when scheduling a meeting and use personal meeting ID when starting an instant meeting, which is what you do if you click Host a Meeting here and start your meeting from here. Or if you can also start your meeting from your personal meeting room by clicking the Start Meeting button in your personal meeting room screen. Setting things up this way will virtually eliminate the possibility of you ending up in one Zoom room and your students ending up in another, as long as you do not use the Confer Zoom app. The Confer Zoom app overrides the settings in your Zoom account and assigns randomized meeting IDs to scheduled meetings regardless of the settings in your account. Whichever decision you make, I would recommend that you check your settings in your meeting or in your account pages at zoom.us to make sure that a password hasn't magically been set that you are unaware of, or some other restriction placed in, such as enabling the waiting room in your meetings if you do not wish that. The waiting room is a useful um, security, a bit of security insurance, which requires you to allow people who try to enter your Zoom meeting into the meeting by approving them, either in groups or one at a time. If everyone joins your meeting at the same time, or within a few minutes of one another, the waiting room is not problematic and does give you an extra layer of security against intrusion. If, on the other hand, you have people coming into your meeting, leaving, coming back, it can be a hassle for you to have to continually let people in. Again, a decision you'd have to make based upon your own usage and preferences. Happy Zooming.